sponsored by Senator Saldana, Allison Mendiola, committee staff. In 2019, the legislature created the Child Welfare Housing Pilot Program in DCYF to provide housing vouchers, rental assistance, and other support services to families with a child who is dependent and whose primary remaining barrier to having the child returned home is a lack of appropriate housing. The purpose of the program is to shorten the time a child remains in out-of-home care. This program was set to expire in 2022 and was funded for another year through the supplemental budget last year, and a report was submitted as required and can be found in your EBB. Based on the report, DCYF recommends that families are assisted earlier in the process and this program be offered statewide or at a minimum continued as a pilot. Under this bill, the program is made permanent, and it's clarified that the entity who is contracted to administer this program have a demonstrated understanding of the importance of stable housing for children and families involved or at risk of being involved with the child welfare system. There is a biennial reporting requirement. This is subject to appropriations, and there is an emergency clause which would go into effect June 30th, 2023, which was when the pilot is set to expire. A fiscal note was requested on January 11th and not yet received. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Members have any questions for Allison? Senator Saldana, come join.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Allison, for the report. It's also nice to come early and be able to hear some of the good work that's happening in this committee, so I was happy to hear that briefing as well. So this is a pilot that was brought to me when I was still just here and, as a new senator, and was looking at ways to support families to be able to stay together. And as a high school student, I volunteered at Child Haven, which is a preschool for kids that are having many challenges in their home life. And what I know is that the trauma of being removed from your family is itself a trauma, no matter what the circumstance. And so when a parent or a kin is able to get their self together, get their resources, and yet any delay in reuniting that child back to their family causes more harm than good. And so this was a bill that was brought as a pilot. We were concerned that it was going to be very large, so we put in extra barriers to make sure that we could really manage it and be able to fund it. I was a new freshman, so you can't ask for too much those first years. But what we found is that the barriers out there, as we know, around housing exist already. And that what we need is a program that's flexible, that can meet families where they are and connect them when housing is the only thing that's preventing them from coming back together. So this builds on the report information that DCYF and the amazing partners that you'll hopefully hear from directly were able to understand through the pilot, and this will now make a permanent program that provides one more tool to help families get connected when that housing is the only thing that's keeping them from being a family again. Thank you so much for your consideration. Open for questions, and appreciate your time.
Appreciate you bringing it forward again. And members have any questions for Senator Saldana?
All right.
All righty.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Okay, we are going to roll back to testimony on 5230. Or wait a minute. Is that the number? Wait a second. Yep. Whew. Okay, 5230. So, Madam Vice Chair, extended foster care, and we're going to open up testimony on Senate Bill 5256, which we've already briefed. That's Senator Saldana's bill, making permanent and expanding the Child Welfare Housing Assistance Program. So Vice Chair Kaufman, first panel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first panel is Michael Mira and Allison Krutzinger.
Good afternoon.
Allison, you can
Thank
begin, yes.
Good morning. It's still morning for the record. Allison Kretzinger with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. Maybe next time I come up for the third bill, it'll be afternoon. Here today in strong support of agency request legislation sponsored by Senator Saldana. As she noted in her testimony, we're asking for the continuation of what has been a very successful pilot in supporting families who are involved in the child welfare system access and pay for housing. One of the key things I'll highlight, you'll hear from great advocates on the bill, but one of the points I'll highlight is that to draw down and access federal housing vouchers, it requires ongoing support or case management for families and youth. We think it's really important that that case management not be tied to the child welfare system if we can safely exit and end the dependency. So the large amount of this resource attached to this bill is for that ongoing support provided by community-based organizations as a requirement of drawing down federal funding for housing vouchers. So with that, I commend the bill to you, and thanks for your leadership.
Thank you. Michael.
Thank you, Chair Wilson, and thank you for this chance to appear before this important committee. My name is Michael Mira. I'm a member of the Family Treatment Court Steering Committee of the Administrative Office of the Courts. On its behalf, I urge you to support this bill and its accompanying appropriation for DCYF. It's meant to address a housing crisis facing the child welfare system. Data tells us that 30% of foster care placements happen or last longer because the family does not have a place to live. 9% of teenagers aging out of foster care become homeless within 3 months. After 12 months, 17% of them become homeless. The judicial term for that is holy moly. This bill and the appropriation fashions a nationally innovative collaboration between DCYF and the state's public housing authorities. The housing authorities are prepared to commit $60 million worth of housing resources and vouchers and apartments to this collaboration. That appropriation for DCYF will pay for its share, and I urge this committee to support both. Thank you.
And holy moly is right, I'll just say. So thank you for your testimony. And we have a second panel remote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have remote panel Carol Mitchell, Tareka Defer, and Emily Stone.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Carol C. Mitchell. I'm an attorney and founder of the Institute for Black Justice, and I'm here today to express my support for Senate Bill 5256 and to ask you to vote it out of committee. The IBJ Chimes Family Advocacy Program has 3 major areas of focus. They are the prevention of CPS and child welfare system involvement, the reunification of families, and the retention of children returning home from the child welfare system. And what we've learned through our work as advocates is that parents who have had their children removed are as traumatized by the experience as are their children. They are often asked to accomplish a significant amount of behavioral change and self-mastery in very short periods of time. Houselessness, or homelessness, as many of you call it, makes that change nearly impossible and deepens the trauma. Let's pass Senate Bill 5256 and put the emphasis back on unification. When we say reunification, let's focus on unification with more family unification program vouchers, rental assistance, and housing navigation. Thank you for voting in favor of families today.
Thank you. Yeah, Tareka, you were there. Can you turn your camera on? There you are.
Hi, yes.
You may go ahead.
So good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Teresa DeFer. Thank you for allowing me to share my personal and professional experience with child welfare involvement and why I support Senate Bill 5256. I have experienced homelessness as a result of my child welfare involvement. 3 months after my youngest children were removed, I became homeless. Engaging to reunify with my children kept me busy day and night, 7 days a week, between services and visitation. 1.5 years into my case, I completed services. However, employment was not feasible during that time, so housing became a barrier to reunification. The reunification for my children and me was prolonged an additional 6 months due to housing. Eventually, 2 years exactly to the month my children returned home, I received a housing voucher that provided a safe and stable home for us to be together again. I share this because as a parent ally, I work with parents still facing the same challenges I faced almost 20 years ago when CPS first knocked at my door. Within days, weeks, and months of child welfare involvement, parents are still impacted by homelessness or struggling to find housing so they can reunify with their children, keeping families separated for longer than necessary. Change requires stability. Strengthening families requires stability. Keeping families together requires stability. Healing requires stability. And stability starts and ends with housing. So supporting to pass Senate Bill 5256 supports families involved with child welfare to have access to permanent housing and the stability they need to be together.
Thank you. All right, next up.
Good morning, Chair Wilson and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Emily Stone, and I'm the Public Policy Director for the Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Our coalition represents over 70 programs across the state, providing advocacy, shelter, and housing services for survivors of domestic violence. And it is truly an honor to be here today testifying in support of Senate Bill 5256, which addresses family reunification for individuals impacted by housing instability. We know that domestic violence is the leading cause of homelessness among women and children. Not only did I work in child welfare for many years and see firsthand how valuable a program like this could be for families, but I also became homeless myself as a teen due to domestic violence in my childhood home. But my situation is not unique. Many families experiencing violence face large barriers to keeping the household together due to the incredibly challenging landscape of the affordable housing crisis. The ability to help families move into permanent, stable housing with the assistance of this program allows their children to return to their family in a stable home, maintain their schooling, and maintain their relationships, which promotes better mental health, reduced anxiety, and happier lives. This program provides critical safety and stability for survivors who are working incredibly hard to flee their situation and keep their children safe. Please support this bill and help prevent the removal of children, as well as ensure that children are not kept in out-of-home placements longer than they need to be, solely because of their parents' housing situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that closes the hearing on that bill.